Penguin Random House Audio presents the Encyclopedia of Cocktails, the people, bars, and drinks with more than 100 recipes. This is the author, Robert Simonson. Introduction. The name of this book was chosen carefully. This is an encyclopedia of cocktails. Its focus is cocktails, just as mine has been for nearly 20 years. Every entry, be it of a spirit or a particular historical bar, or a notable person, or a professional tool, is written with a view of how that spirit, bar, person, or tool played a role in the history, progress, and proliferation of cocktails and cocktail culture. So the entry on rye whiskey, for instance, does not dwell overly long on how rye is made or who makes it, information better left to books whose subject is whiskey or the making of spirits, of which there are many, but rather how it is used in cocktails and how that use has changed over time. In other words, I wrote this book wearing cocktail-colored glasses. The time frame covered by this book ranges from the earliest days of mixology to the current day. There are classic cocktails and modern classics, bars that live in legend only and bars that operate today, bartenders famous in their day and famous today. Regarding the tone of the book, I have tried to write a popular people's history of cocktails. During my years as a cocktail historian, the texts that I have enjoyed best and gotten the most out of, be they books or individual pieces of journalism, were the ones written with a point of view and heavy dollops of opinion. That sort of attitude is, I believe, natural. It's almost impossible to sample a drink or experience a bar without developing an almost instant impression of them. The urge to express those impressions follows almost immediately after. I've tried to follow in that outspoken tradition in these pages. Throughout, one of the models I kept in mind was Samuel Johnson's Dictionary of the English Language from 1755. I don't pretend to Johnson's greatness, but I have admired since college his decision to inject humor and opinion into his definitions. Classic example, oats, a grain which in England is generally given to horses, but in Scotland supports the people. When's the last time you laughed or even smiled while reading a reference book? I hope you will while listening to this one. That air of playful bias extends to the entries themselves, which number more than 300. All were selected by me and me alone. Some choices were obvious. Of course, I had to include the martini, Jerry Thomas, El Floridita, and gin. If not, there would have been hell to pay. But mixed in between the expected topics from absinthe to zombie, you will find more than a few wild cards. A. Absinthe, the bar. A French-style brasserie that opened in 1997 in the Hayes Valley neighborhood of San Francisco. The bar was managed by Marcovaldo Dionysus, an up-and-coming bartender and ardent student of cocktail history. Dionysus put that knowledge to work. His innovative menu was not only littered with neglected classic cocktails, but listed each drink's place and date of origin, a novelty at the time. The Ginger Rogers, a mixture of gin, lemon juice, ginger syrup, ginger ale, and mint, based on The Favorite, an old cocktail published in 1914 by Jacques Straub, proved to be the bar's breakout drink. Dionysus left absinthe after 3 years. Absinthe, the spirit. An herbal liqueur with a strong flavor of anise that has enjoyed an important, almost romantic, and certainly dramatic role in cocktail history. Originating in Switzerland and associated with late 19th century Paris, where it was the favorite of artists and the bohemian set, absinthe has played a starring role in drinks like the absinthe drip and the absinthe frappe, which were quite popular in the late 19th century, particularly in New Orleans, a city whose love of the spirit has never died. Shout out to the old Absinthe House on Bourbon Street. But more often, it is used as an important accent flavor in innumerable cocktails that have other spirits as their base, including the Blackthorn, Turf Club, Tuxedo, Monkey Gland, Morning Glory, De La Louisiane, Corpse Survivor No. 2, Remember the Maine, and, most famously, the Sazerac. Absinthe's life in cocktails was cut short by a virtual ban on the spirit in the United States in 1912, the result of a global demonization of the liqueur, which was defamed as the cause of mayhem and madness. Substitutes like Herbsant and Pernod stepped in while absinthe was off the market. The absinthe ban remained in effect for nearly a century, much to the frustration of mixologists, who required it to recreate dozens of old cocktail recipes. Its repeal was largely the work of a Louisiana chemist named Ted Breaux, who was inspired by Barnaby Conrad III's book on the subject. He collected old bottles of absinthe and tested them for thujone, a chemical compound that detractors said led to hallucinations and violent behavior. The experiments revealed nothing potentially deleterious about the liquid. Breaux wrote scientific studies and with the help of Viridian Spirits succeeded in having the absinthe ban repealed in 2007. Similar bans were repealed in other countries around the same time. Viridian and Breaux then collaborated on the first new mass-market brand of absinthe in nearly a century, Lucid. More brands followed, as did absinthe-themed cocktail bars. In New York, a New Orleans-style bar called Maison Premier opened in Brooklyn, and Sasha Petrasky opened White Star in Manhattan. The first succeeded, the second didn't. Ultimately, absinthe-obsessed bartenders overestimated the public interest in the product. A dismissive 2009 article in the New York Times captured the mood at the time. Quote, "It tasted like licorice. Remember, licorice jelly beans are always the last to go." End quote. Eventually, absinthe returned to its former role as a modifier used in dashes or small measurements. But for a time in the late aughts, every cocktail bar in the nation proudly displayed an absinthe drip device on its bar top. The theater of the preparation was much of the appeal of an absinthe drip. Cold water drips through a sugar cube set on an ornate, slotted absinthe spoon perched atop a glass filled with absinthe. This slowly results in the lushing of the mixture. As the clear spirit turns opaque, it takes on a dreamy, pale green hue. A few bartenders came up with significant new cocktails that called for absinthe, among them the Paddington at the trailblazing New York cocktail bar PDT and Joy Division at Death & Company. Adonis. A blend of sherry, sweet vermouth, and orange bitters, the Adonis is one of the three classic sherry cocktails, the others being the bamboo and the sherry cobbler. The Adonis was named after the 1884 Broadway musical Adonis, which was a sensation in its time, running more than 500 performances. If the bamboo was the world's sherry martini, this was its Manhattan. The drink all but disappeared in the latter 20th century, as sherry, as well as low ABV cocktails, went out of fashion. Sherry-loving mixologists brought it back in the 21st century. The ratios of sherry to vermouth vary widely in early recipes, and the style of sherry is never specified, leaving modern bartenders a lot of latitude in how to best present the drink. Recipe for Adonis: 1½ ounces Fino or Manzanilla sherry, 1½ ounces sweet vermouth, 2 dashes of orange bitters. Combine the ingredients in a mixing glass half filled with ice and stir until chilled, about 15 seconds. Strain into a chilled coupe. Express an orange twist over the drink and drop it in the glass. Alaska. A relative of the martini that uses yellow chartreuse instead of vermouth. The drink first appeared in the 1910s and was sometimes made with Old Tom gin. Later on, as Old Tom became less available, London dry gin became the norm. Modern mixologists gave the drink a mild revival in the 2010s. Recipe for Alaska: 2¼ ounces Old Tom gin, 3/4 ounce yellow chartreuse, 1 dash orange bitters. Combine the ingredients in a mixing glass half filled with ice and stir until chilled, about 15 seconds. Strain into a chilled coupe. Alexander. A classic cocktail made with gin, creme de cacao, and cream, and sometimes an egg white. It began to appear in cocktail books in the 1910s. By the mid-century, the brandy Alexander, in which brandy stood in for the gin, exceeded it in popularity to the point that few people today are aware of the original Alexander. In some books in the 1930s, The brandy version was...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?